Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the MultiDimensional MD. I'm Dr. Arlene Diamco, your host today, and it's just me today, but I want to welcome you here. My mission is to help raise the bar of health and to shed light on the multidimensional aspects of our being, to bring spirit back to medicine, and to be able to normalize these conversations on the most important aspects of our lives. So today, I want to talk about happiness. And the reason I started thinking about this for this week is I got reminded of Tony Hsieh again, and he's the late founder of Zappos, and he completely transformed corporations in terms of their philosophy and their lifestyle, their approach to business and service. Yet he had his own struggles with happiness. He's also the author of Delivering Happiness. And so, and then I heard about another story. A friend was telling me about another happiness expert who was really struggling with depression and anxiety. And it's not to put these people down at all. I have so much respect for them. And I know it's really human nature to be very interested in things that are very personal to us. And so in a way, these people that are struggling with their own feelings of happiness sometimes become obsessed with it. And I wanted to tease this apart more because I was wondering, what's missing? How is it difficult for people who are very interested in happiness to also have so much difficulty with it? And that just got me thinking about just looking at happiness in a different way, maybe shedding more light on it, adding some clarity, just teasing apart like what myths there are to happiness. So I'm going to go through 8 keys to happiness. And the first one is really just clarifying the myth of happiness, because number one, it's not about the stuff. And so much in our lives, we think that having more things, or having the perfect job, or having the perfect thing to eat, having the perfect home to live in, the car or whatever, that will bring us happiness. And it's not that a delicious meal doesn't bring you happiness. I'm a foodie, so I love good food. But that kind of happiness is really temporary. So any of the stuff will bring us temporary happiness. Now, of course, there is a line where if we are having our basic needs met, of course, like having enough food, having a safe place to live, a shelter, and so having those basic needs. But then beyond that, the stuff doesn't necessarily bring us more happiness. Having like even more clothes and more getting like having dessert. It's such a transient kind of happiness. That sugar brings you just a moment of this feeling of like it makes you happy, but it doesn't have a depth to it, right? And number 2, in terms of these myths, is it's also not about always getting your way. And this is when we feel like that, it's because we get into these control mindset. We want everything to be just so and just right. And that's not really how life is. We do not have control over everything. So we can't always get our way. And even though we would like to, if we rely on always being able to get our way and being able to control our situation 100%, then it's not going to lead to lifelong happiness. So how can we do this in a way that is going to be more fulfilling, have more depth to it? So that starts to lead us into shifting that mindset away from the stuff, away from the control, to one that is more optimistic. And this is about just having a bigger perspective. So in this cranial osteopathy class that I taught last weekend, it was one thing was if people were feeling confused and unclear, we talked about widening your perspective. And so if we're not sure where to see that optimism, then it's about pausing and being able to widen our perspective. And this is where we can have some influence on our mind and our mindset, to be able to see that there's more to this. Maybe there's more to this difficult moment that feels really challenging. What if there's something amazing around the corner? And this is part of that transformative process. And so that's what I like to assume. In this kind of a global pandemic and so much going on, that what is going on here? There is a huge transformative process, and that makes it worthwhile for us to be going through certain things. And that's optimism, and seeing that there is a light, and regardless of how heavy things feel, that there is some kind of light and purpose to all of this, even though we may not understand it. We may not be able to see the big picture, but to at least pause and consider that there is one. So maybe you can start to get a sense of it when you do that, when you widen your perspective, and you have to choose to do this, to allow it consciously so that you can become more optimistic. Because if we know when we're constantly worrying about things and feeling really down and negative, sometimes it can become this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So if we could place our influence where we do have some control, and that's over shifting our mindset. And be gentle, because it doesn't always happen all at once. So baby steps, and those baby steps are in noticing the small moments in your life that do bring happiness, and so much of the time it is in these tiny things that happen on a regular basis that are really these precious moments. I remember once one of my daughters, she was just laying on the bed, and I was arranging my clothes and my dresses and hemming some of them, so just tweaking some of them. And then she happened to mention, I forget what we were talking about, but it had to do with happiness and how to stay calm and relaxed. And she said that she looks around and looks for beautiful moments in her life. And she said, like now, I'm just laying here and I'm watching you sew your dresses. And she's like, and that's really beautiful. And that just made me, brought tears to my eyes, because here I was not really thinking I was doing anything profound. And I was simply, I guess, in a way, being mindful about sewing and just not worrying about anything. And my mind wasn't elsewhere. It was just here in the room, and she was there watching me. And I had a needle in my hands and sewing the hems of my dresses. And she said that was a really beautiful moment. I think that's just, there's so much depth there. It's so simple, yet at the same time, there's a lot of depth to that. And so I could pause at any moment and look around. And even here, doing this live stream, I'm looking at you. I don't even know who's out there, but I'm looking at you and I'm seeing, wow, this is a really amazing moment that we can have this connection. And it's really quite simple, but at the same time, it's really precious. And I value it and see the beauty in it, this moment to moment beauty. And I think that's really awesome. So when you're not able to see, have that optimism, just back out first and widen your perspective, and know that shift, allowing that shift in perspective, is something that you can have conscious influence over. It's just allowing it, and then start to notice those small moments in your life. You don't have to go for the big ones, just those tiny ones, because they can really teach you about the depth of living. So going on, in terms of shifting this mindset, to let yourself be, because with all this happiness talk, then we start to get into, it can be this obsession of chasing happiness. And that is not really going to provide more happiness. It's the paradox of it, right? It's that the more obsessed you become about happiness, it's like the more fleeting it is, because there's always the next thing. And especially when we tie happiness to stuff, there's always more stuff. Or when we don't get our way, there are times that we're not going to have things under our control. And it's being able to relax and allow yourself to feel and to just be your authentic self. I wrote down something last month. My dad passed a few months ago, well, 4 months now in January, and I wrote down something that had come to me from him in spirit. And this was in March. And I don't even remember what brought this on, but these words came to me. And he said, I wanted to be the best too, but that doesn't exist. Just be yourself. And I think that's so amazing and beautiful that the best doesn't really exist. It's just you being yourself. So when you relax into this, just letting yourself be, and you don't have to necessarily be happy every single moment, then we start to understand there's even more to happiness, and there's this depth of something that feels even grander. And I'm going to talk about that more in a moment. And so it starts to shift more from chasing happiness to allowing this deep joy into your life that's more everlasting, that's less transient than these fleeting feelings of happiness. Or in a way, it redefines happiness to be one that has more depth. And so letting yourself be, letting yourself breathe, and not having to feel like you have to be happy all the time, because there's so much pressure to that. And so in the same mindset, it's to be kind to yourself. And every moment, we don't know what's going to happen in the day. We make our plans, they may not happen. So to be kind to yourself. And what would you say to yourself if you were actually being a good friend to yourself and really loved yourself? And how would your thoughts come out differently in your mind? So this ever-shifting mindset. And last week, my friend Maudie Fowler, who's a mystic, she talked about how happiness is a state of mind. And so you can see how we're teasing this apart even more about what does that mean, that happiness is a state of mind. It's that realizing, to recap, it's realizing it's not about the stuff and about being in control, but influencing where you can. So that's with your mindset, to allow a grander perspective that allows some optimism, and that you know that there's this transformative process that's unfolding, and that's really amazing. To notice those small moments in your life, and to release the pressure of being happy and to let yourself be. And now to use kind words to yourself whenever you speak to yourself. And then moving on to number 7, is to cultivate this inner joy. So kind of shifting from happiness to more deep feeling of joy. And it's this rainbow of color and expression in your life. And so I think about, like, even with my dad's passing, there can be this joyful grief, a joyful sadness. And last weekend, I was helping teach the hands-on portion of this intro course to cranial osteopathy. And I could feel my dad's presence with me. He was like right here, right a little behind me and to my right side the whole time. And I thought that was so amazing. And my friend and colleague that was with me, she could actually feel him too. And so even though I am still sad and miss his physical presence, there was this great joy of feeling him constantly with me and helping me. It was helping me teach other physicians and passing on like this wisdom. And so, just helping me with my role, which I find my job in these, really in any situation, whether it's teaching this cranial osteopathy course or in my practice or with my family, is to be grounded and present, to be able to see the joy, beauty, and love in any moment in the world. And that's regardless of whatever pain and suffering is going on, because to have this great trust that even though are difficulties and there is pain, there is suffering, that whatever we're going through is somehow transformative process to something even more amazing. And it takes a lot of mindfulness and patience to have that grounded perspective. But I do this really in many different aspects of my life, many different parts of my life. So again, whether teaching or with my one-on-one with my patients or with my family. And so seeing my kids like sometimes go through difficult moments, and they can get stressed with taking exams, and that's normal. And so when they go through those things, it's not always about trying to control or fix their situation or experience. I mean, we do have to keep it safe, but it's also about allowing them to have some sort of authentic experience that they can feel safe to be able to feel. And they can feel even safer if we provide this grounded and loving, non-judgmental presence for them. And that presence will be even more guiding. And this is like a whole other topic, right? We could talk so much more about that with parenting. And but anyway, cultivating this inner joy, this mindful presence that we can experience and feel the rainbow and wholeness of life experience, so that you can have more than one depth of emotion at the same time. You can be grieving and you can still feel joy. And number 8, to, of course, feel compassion for yourself and others. And it really starts with yourself, because to be able to feel that love and compassion, you have to be able to feel it for yourself in order for it to have even more depth to it, for it to have this grounding presence to it. And so when you have that compassion, even though there can be difficulties or maybe arguments or things that don't go how we want them to, then we can still feel this joy in the relationship, in the presence of knowing that everyone is going through their own thing, and often things aren't personal. That and I would like the same for myself, so to have the compassion for myself, and that if I had a moment that maybe I didn't reflect my best self, or it was a bit moody or grumpy, that I would have that same compassion from someone else, and also to kind of have that compassion for myself in that moment to move forward, and to do that for other people, to realize that they always have this light within them, and that if you're grounded and present, that you can see that and know that sometimes when they are responding to situations in maybe a way that doesn't seem like the best way, that they're going through their own struggles. And when you can have compassion, you can not only help yourself through that moment, but you can help them through that moment as well. Because they can circle back around and maybe treat you the same way. Maybe not. but doing it for yourself is already enough. So thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope that helped to provide some clarity and widen the perspective on happiness and how to bring more happiness and depth of joy of living into your life. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and comment. Let me know where you are. I never know who's out there unless you let me know. I would love to connect with you more. You can find me on Instagram at All Worlds Health and on Facebook at All Worlds Health and Pediatrics, and my website, allworldshealth.com. And as promised, I wanted to give a shout out to Isaac. So hi, Isaac. A lot of love to you. Lots of love to all of you. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And I will see you next week on another episode of the MultiDimensional MD. It's Dr. Arlene Diamco. See you next time.